Well, when I first made the real journey when I was 11 years old, I had no thought of characters or stages or anything like that. But when I came to write the book, I didn't really remember much of that real journey, so I had to invent it. So in that sense, the characters in the book were like theatrical performers. I began the book thinking it was just going to be about this one very lost 11-year-old boy getting on a ship to England. And then he had two friends turn up, and then the people at the La Table des Autres, all the other characters, 5 or 6 other characters, become part of the story. So it did feel like an enclosed stage setting. And so most of the story is an invention of an adventure of a small boy on a ship. Well, I think that the interesting thing about childhood is that, it's usually very separate from the adult world. The adults live their daily life, and the boys and girls go off and go to school or something else, and they have their own universe. But in this case, because they're on a ship, they can't hide or they can't go to the woods or anything like that. So they're forced against against adults. And so they have to they start to watch the adults and see how adults behave. So it's a very new world for them. They're like spies of the adult world, And so they're learning things about adults, but they don't really understand them. They can see where they are and who is meeting who, but they don't know if there was a love story there or what. So in a way, the second half of the book, which is that boy who's grown up, looking back again at what happened to him as a boy, that older writer begins to sort of understand what really happened. So you have the child's point of view and then the adult's point of view. I think what happened was when I told my own children how I came to England by ship and that there was no parental guidance at all on the ship, they were rather startled at how bizarre how strange that was. I mean, they have children now, and they worry about them going across the city on a bus, So, and I thought when they said that, I thought that is true. That I had this very strange, I was put on a ship all alone, and so then when I started to write the story, I decided to write it as if it was for my children. This was an adventure that happened to me. It wasn't quite true, it was very exaggerated, but I think when you tell a story, you are entertaining somebody. You're not just telling them what happened. That's rather boring. So, and that's a problem for me with memoirs. Memoirs just tell people what you did, whereas, if you're telling an adventure or you're telling a thriller or a dramatic story, then that becomes much more vivid, I think. I think I was lucky that when I did think about writing the book, that there was very little evidence of that journey. That there are no photographs taken on that ship. I mean, photography wasn't as common then as it is today. And so because there was very little grounding, because there was very little limitation, I could then start from scratch and tell a whole new story. So even though I don't know what these characters like Ramadan and Cassius look like, it allows me to invent them even more. I think Mr. Fonseca for me is a very interesting character, because I think he was the first person I really portrayed in the book. And it took me to a new place of understanding of a certain kind of person. And the person I was interested in portraying is the man from the 1950s who comes to England from Asia with much less confidence than someone today does. There's more an air of racism in the air. He really does feel he's in a foreign country. And the only thing that protects someone like him is literature and books. And he's a very keen reader all the time. He loves literature. And in a way, I say that you only find people who are that peaceful when they have the armor of books close by. No, I don't know what it is. I think readers have a more peaceful time than writers. Writers are always worrying about can they fix that, or what did you do next, and so forth. To be a reader is a wonderful thing. It's like having friends come up to you with more stories and more stories and more stories. So that's the great pleasure of reading. I think near the end of the book, the boy Mina, who has lost one friend, he's lost Ramadan, and he wants to share his story. You know, he wants to share the fact that perhaps the convict's daughter is not dead. And because he knows that this is something that devastated Cassius when he was a young boy on the crossing. And because he watches Cassius turn away from that event and become a cold person, you know, a damaged person. So I think it's from what he's discovered or what he's imagined has happened, which may be fictional, he wants to tell Cassius this possibility.